Apparently, people from Crimea are not allowed in the European Union nor in the United States, but Ukrainians want to return to Crimea. Confused? Well, there's also this. Ukraine sold Moldovan missiles to ISIS. All of this is Russian disinformation, and this is StopFake, the place where we break down Kremlin fakes about Ukraine. So let's get to it. Recently, the Russian embassy to the United Kingdom announced that the United States and the European Union are oppressing the Crimean people. The embassy says that several EU countries refuse to issue Schengen visas to residents of the annexed Crimea Peninsula, and this is a violation of the rights of peoples to free movement, going against international human rights standards. According to Russian officials, since 2014, Crimean residents allegedly cannot travel to Europe without facing discrimination. This latest Russian diplomatic hot air mission appears against the backdrop of a recent statement by the ambassador of the European Union to the Russian Federation, Marko Suprun. In a July 22nd TASS interview, Suprun stressed that the European Union does not and will not recognize the Russian annexation of Crimea, and that is why the EU will not issue Schengen visas to Crimeans who hold Russian-issued passports. However, he advised Crimeans that they can visit European countries with Ukrainian passports anytime and without any problems. After Russia annexed Crimea, 2 million residents of the occupied peninsula were automatically recorded by Moscow as new Russian citizens. According to Ukrainian and international law, these newly issued Russian passports are not recognized in most parts of the world, including the European Union and the United States. Russian diplomats complain about fake oppression while insisting on the legality of its annexation of Crimea. But the reality is that the Russian occupation of the Ukrainian peninsula is what created these citizenship problems for Crimean residents in the first place. According to Russian officials, only 19,000 Crimean residents gave up their Ukrainian citizenship after Russia annexed the peninsula. That is, less than 1% of the population. The rest of the peninsula's residents continue being Ukrainian citizens and can obtain biometric passports and freely enjoy the benefits of visa-free travel to the EU that all Ukrainian citizens have. According to Ukraine's State Migration Service, as of February 2019, 134,232 residents of annexed Crimea had received Ukrainian biometric passports. Residents of Crimea can apply for passports according to the same procedures as Ukrainians on the mainland, providing the same necessary documents. There are 22 passport offices throughout Ukraine, with Kherson being the closest city for Crimean residents. Take note that citizenship discrimination and alleged human rights abuses is a much favored narrative of the Kremlin propaganda machine. This week, Russian media announced that Ukrainians are demanding that rail traffic to Crimea be reinstated so that Ukrainians can vacation on the Russian peninsula. If you believe Russian media, Ukrainians are hoping that Ukraine's new government and newly elected president will reinstate both rail and air traffic between the annexed peninsula and the Ukrainian mainland. And of course, Russian officials welcome this fake story, stressing that the Kremlin would be only happy with such an initiative from the Ukrainians. Russian media based the claims on two petitions which appeared simultaneously on the Ukrainian presidential website on July 25th, and very suspiciously, Russian news outlets began quickly spreading them around. Petitions on the president's website required 25,000 signatures in order to be considered. At the time of this publication, one petition had 710 votes and the other one had 1,042. These numbers are a far cry from the massive support that Russian media claim these initiatives have. Ukraine's infrastructure minister Volodymyr Omelyan has repeatedly stated that Kyiv will not hold any negotiations with Russia on air and rail transit to Crimea. Travel to the peninsula, to Luhansk and Donetsk will be fully restored once Russia no longer occupies those territories. After Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, Ukraine officially stopped cargo and passenger rail services to the peninsula. Pro-Kremlin Russian media has once again returned to one of its favorite tropes, blaming Ukraine for complicity with terrorists. According to the propaganda site Fond Strategiczej Kultury, an unnamed Ukrainian company allegedly purchased missiles from Moldova and sold them to ISIS. The alleged transaction supposedly took place at Moldova's Marculesti Airport, which until 2017 was the Marculesti Air Force Base, and it was owned and operated by the Moldovan Defense Ministry. Russian media cite former Marculesti Airport Director Vladimir Maiduk, who in an interview to the Russian-language online newspaper Moldovsky Vedomosti said that since 2015, Marculesti Airport has sold 3 S-125 surface-to-air missile systems to Ukraine. Maiduk's claim is the only time Ukraine is actually mentioned, and there is no evidence confirming any Ukrainian involvement in any sale of Moldovan missiles to ISIS presented in any of the fake Russian stories. At the same time, the Marculesti Airport is also at the center of a huge corruption scandal and investigation. Now, this is not the first time that pro-Kremlin Russian media has accused Ukraine of collaborating with terrorist organizations. In 2015, it was reported that ISIS was buying FN-6 Chinese air defense missiles via Ukraine. At that time, Ukraine's defense ministry stated that this missile had never been part of Ukraine's military arsenal and that such missiles had never been transported through Ukrainian territory. Another arms scandal was unleashed in August of 2017 when Ukraine was accused of supplying engines for North Korean missiles. An August 14, 2017 New York Times story claimed that analysts evaluating photographs of North Korea's new missiles concluded that the design for North Korean missile engines resemble old Soviet engines which could have been produced at the Yuzhmash missile factory in the south-central Ukrainian city of Dnipro. Ukraine officially rebutted these claims, and the country's then National Security and Defense Chief Alexander Turchinov emphatically stated that Ukraine did not supply any engine or rocket technology to North Korea. Yuzhmash also refuted the claims made by the New York Times. Yuzhmash has never had any connection with North Korea defense or missile programs, the company wrote in a public statement. According to Yuzhmash's public affairs office, the company has not produced any military missile systems since Ukraine declared independence in August of 1991. That's it for this week. You can find much more dissected disinformation on the StopFake website. Be vigilant, look out for fakes, and if you spot any disinformation about Ukraine, forward it to us for a truth autopsy. I'm Marko Suprun, and this is StopFake. Thanks for watching.